I think it's kind of douchey and scummy to just kick people to the curb because you want to be in with a fucking G4 network that's not even going to be around for more than 45 minutes.
There was another video that was released over the weekend by Some Ordinary Gamers. We saw a video that was followed up by Carl Jobs. He released a video towards the tail end of last week. Razor, have you been following this whole ordeal?
I've heard about it a little bit. I have kind of a prior association with Gerard, and I'm not really familiar with his charity streams or whatever the fuck, but yeah, go ahead and fill me in.
Okay, so the long story short of this is these two YouTubers, Carl Jobs and Mudahar from Some Ordinary Gamers, they were tipped off by somebody else, some anonymous person, about they should probably do a little digging on Gerard's charity. And Gerard has done charity streams for the better part of almost a decade now and has raised about $650,000 from his charity. And with the intention of, it's always been sold as this money is going to go to other charities to help with Alzheimer's research and such. The problem with that is that none of that money ever made it to any of those charities, and it's been sitting in the bank account for the better part of its entirety, right? So more or less losing money because of inflation, and it never went to all the places that were promised. So they did a little digging, and they had a call with him, and he's like, yeah, you know, really bad. It's something I wasn't aware of, because he's a charter member of or like a director of the charity, but I think it's one of those things he's more like a front man for it.
Right.
And the argument is, well, was it negligence or was it on purpose? But these other videos have come out, and they talk specifically about another arm that feeds money into the bank account for the charity. There is the Open Hand Foundation and his Indie World thing that he does, which all benefits the Open Hand Foundation. And there's also a golf tournament. And in all of their filings every year, like none of the money for the golf tournament ends up in the bank account.
Yeah, see, that's what is sketchy about this. What I'm hearing that's sketchy as shit is the money's not moving around and the charities aren't being selected that the money's going to go to, but boy, they're making sure they continue to do charity events. Like that,
right.
None of that has slowed down. I could understand if maybe the charity just slowed down in general and the money just hadn't been moved yet because nothing's happening with the charity or some shit. But no, they're still doing events, apparently, you're saying.
Yes, and there was one as early as just last month in November, right?
Christ and a cocksucker. What?
Right. So Mudahar went in and he looked at the previous 3 years of tax filings for it in 2019, 2021, and 22, because obviously nothing happened in 2020 because the world shut down, right?
Right.
So, and the big thing was there was a lot of money that wasn't accounted for. In 2019, there was about $14,000 that weren't accounted for from the charity stream, as well as all of the golf money from the charity, from the event, which was like $50,000, $60,000. And then in 2021, it was all the golf money wasn't there, including during the streams, he has said, like, look, you use bits, you buy merchandise, that's all going to it. And that's what Mudahar has uncovered as well. But the long and short of it, I think if you were to add it all up, it's probably well over $100,000 over the last just couple of years that hasn't been accounted for, which, we've talked about this previously. We talked about it with Melanie a couple times. Like, I've never had a bad interaction with Gerard, right? And some people will say, well, you're covering for him. I'm not covering for anybody, right? If there was any sort of malicious intent to this, dude, send him to fucking jail, right? Like, it is what it is. If there was holding on to money and he was looking to extort or exploit or just use it for anything else than what the charity was intended for, fucking send him to jail. Give him a stiff fine and let him find a stiff fine in jail. So that's my thoughts on that. I don't know, Razor, your overall thoughts on this. They said you had a previous relationship with Completionist. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's kind of a ditto to yours. I never had a negative. He was a fan of mine, right? But this is before his channel took off, before he found the Completionist formula and then blew up, right? He was a lot smaller than my channel. at the time, I think. And he was just a fan of what I did and expressed that in DMs. And we went back and forth. And even after his channel blew up, we still talked a fair bit and never had one negative interaction ever. Once he got in with kind of the mainstream gaming media folks, he had to kick all the wrong thinkers to the curb. So one day I think after the Frosk thing, right? Because he was on that panel when Frosk had her 5-alarm Joe Dirt meltdown.
Yep.
And he was sitting there looking like he was, staring at the Ark of the Covenant. And so I literally checked his social media for the first time ever in a long time, and all of a sudden realized I'd been unfollowed. So that was my only interaction with him, but it was like we had never been cross with each other or anything like that. So I have no reason to believe he was like a scammer or whatever. I think it's kind of douchey and scummy to just kick people to the curb because you want to be in with a fucking G4 network that's not even going to be around for more than 45 minutes if you knew a single fucking thing about business, but that's another story entirely. So, to me, it's like, it sounds like he was kind of the front man. It sounds like he was one of many revenue generators for these guys. And it sounds like something sketchy is going on with the charity itself.
Yes.
Like, because the fact that they are not moving money, but they are making sure to continue to accrue it is beyond fucking sus. That's really the indicator of the fraud to me.
I think it's, yes, I definitely agree with you. But I don't think in a situation like this that it's gone on like 1 year. It is what it is, right? If you say, oh, I don't know where we didn't do anything with the money. It's our mistake. Like 6, 7, 8 years. Okay. That's like fraud. There are major issues with that. And, like I said, this would be one of the greatest downfalls in YouTube history, right? If you're talking about a guy who has a very good reputation that has just been more or less imploded on himself. And, we talked about this briefly with Melanie the other day, but he hasn't said anything. And it's because his lawyers are saying, you don't say shit. You do not say anything, and rightfully so. He probably shouldn't say something because anything he can say will be used in the court of law. 100%.
If he admits that he's on the board, then he's going to be accountable in some way. If it turns out to be fraudulent, because you can't take any position of responsibility and then not be accorded that responsibility when the shit hits the fan, right? Mm-hmm. When the shit flies fanward, I'm afraid you're going to get splashed. That's how that works if you're in a leadership position. So even if it's ceremonial, like he needs to wrap that up. If there is something sketchy going on with this charity, he needs to back sideways away from it a little bit if I were him. And I would probably make a public statement. Hey, what the fuck? Whatever. I would get with my lawyer first about that public statement, though.
100%. As Brian says, when the charity says 100% of donations will go to said organization, should we question that? Absolutely. You should question everything. And this to me is such a bad situation for everybody, not just for Gerard. It's the worst situation for Gerard. But what it does is it makes all charities suspects in a situation like this, because
it does. And maybe it should. Look, I've done a lot of volunteer work. I've done a lot of like stuff like that. And I can tell you there are good charities and bad charities. And some of them are glorified laundering operations. I've been fortunate enough to work with some really, really good ones. But I'm always maybe it's just me, but I'm always a little bit suspicious anyways of people who are always raising for charity, but they never actually get out in the world and do anything for anyone. They never like volunteer. They never go down to a food bank. It's like I want to sit in an armchair and pay someone else to do a good thing. It pays, morally to get up off your ass and do something every now and then. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't take that long. You're just pretty much out your time that day. And believe it or not, it's a pretty enriching experience as well. If you go down, even working at a simple food bank or a clothing drive or whatever, a Goodwill for a day, like seriously, you would not believe how much homeless people appreciate it when you're working at the, soup kitchen or the soup tent, or you would not believe it. I cannot recommend highly enough that instead of donating to those kind of streams, donate your time to one of those. And they're everywhere. Every major city and even a lot of small ones have food banks, have clothing drives, homeless shelters. This whole thing, and YouTube is kind of complicit in this because now YouTube has the full-on this is a charity stream feature, and I know there's some scammers in that field. I just know there fucking are. So I worry about that.
There's a lot to this, and you're right. I think getting out there and donating your time and going into these banks is very important. For me, I've been looking for a charitable aspect for side scrollers for really since before we got started. That was something that I thought long and hard about. If there's a charitable aspect, a charity we could donate to, but this is honestly, it's caused me to pull back dramatically on that idea. And that sucks because it takes one bad person or one bad idea and one bad story to really screw over the whole group. And we've seen this tale told many times from many different directions. It's just one bad apple. But what do you think about this? Leave us a comment down below. We read every single one of them. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe button because you have found your home for common sense in the gaming and entertainment worlds.